If you often finish the opening and then think, now what? This video is for you. For example, how would you play here as white? We've got a very normal situation where both sides finished their development, castled, and now you need to make a decision. The difficulty is, there are plenty of moves that you can play here and all of them make certain sense. So how do you pick? Here's the rule. I call it a victory lap, least active piece. You look at your position, you ask yourself which of your pieces are already active. In this case, it's the queen and the two bishops that are putting pressure, right? They all are very active. And then you look at your pieces that are lazy, that are not doing much, that are dozing. And here, these are clearly these two rooks that are not involved. And with that in mind, just begin to ask yourself, how do I activate these pieces? All right, with the rook, it would make a lot of sense for white to push the pawn forward to f4 and open up the f-file. But right now, you cannot advance the pawn because it's pinned down to the king. So how do you do this? I played pawn to g3 to get the king out of the way. Black played h6 to kick the bishop out. The bishop retreats. King to h7. Black just solidifies. King to g2. Now the king is no longer in the way, and f4 is coming. Black retreated the knight back to f8 just to consolidate. Now pawn to f4. And you see that the plan is very simple, actually, but also very powerful. Now white is putting pressure, and if black trades, this rook is getting involved. White can easily bring the other rook into play, and white gets a strong attack. If you're curious to see the entire game, I'll link it down below. In this next position, it is white to move, and players will probably play all sorts of moves with castle, play e5, maybe try to pin the knight by playing bishop to g5, but very few would find the right move here. And the right one is bishop to a3, because the idea is you want to prevent your opponent from casting. And while most players have heard about this, they just underestimate the power of this. This factor alone is often enough to win the game, because if your opponent's king stays in the middle of the board, you can keep attacking it, and there's nothing really that your opponent can do to stop your attack. Here, black tries playing d6 to block your bishop and to renew a possibility of his castle, but you play e5 to break open the center, remove this pawn from d6, and once that happens, your bishop is still active. He still cannot castle because his king cannot cross the attacked square. And now you begin attacking queen to b3, and just notice how difficult for black it is to do something against that. Bishop takes, f7 is coming. You can also play a knight to g5 if you want to. That's the beauty of the position. You keep attacking, and your opponent is defenseless. They're trying bishop e6 or whatever, but now you trade, queen takes e6 comes with a check. Notice that the king still cannot move because of your bishop, that cuts it off, and then you can attack easily, you can attack the queen cannot move away because of queen takes e7, checkmate, and otherwise it leads to this fantastic position, like black is absolutely paralyzed and attacked from every angle possible, and then you keep attacking his centralized king and win the game. Next up is a super common error, especially if you're rated below 1000. Do not weaken your pawn chain for a one-move attack. An attacked piece will easily move away, but that permanent weakness will stay for the rest of the game with you, and your opponent will be able to keep putting pressure on it. Notice how white here has an easy plan of targeting this weak pawn on d6, and there is not much black can do against it, just for the fact that black voluntarily himself moved this pawn from c7, where everything was nice and protected, to c5, and now this pawn is weak, as well as a bunch of squares around it. The next idea is one of the main differences that differentiates strong players from the rest. Here's the idea. Attacking moves occur on your opponent's half of the board. In this position, it was black to play, and black played knight to f5. I'm sure a lot of players would also castle or maybe even trade off their bishop, but strong players think differently. They look at their opponent's half of the board and they ask themselves, how do I make damage there? How do I make a forced move? How do I capture or attack something there? And with that in mind, black would have noticed queen takes h4, the black just missed out this opportunity to capture the bishop in one move. They instead played knight to f5, taking it here. White played bishop g3. Okay, now which move should black play here? It's the same stuff. Focus on the white side of the board. How can I make an attacking move there? Probably knight takes g3 to disrupt white's pawn structure. Okay, black instead castled. That also makes sense. Now, how should white play here? Armed with this idea, you can see how easy it is to find correct moves. You gotta focus on black's side of the board and ask yourself, how can white come forward onto black's half of the board and make a check, a threat, or a capture? And here white had queen takes c7 checkmate in one because it is supported by the bishop. And it's interesting that here both players rated approximately 1000, they're not beginners, but both of them missed it. White could capture it with the bishop, but of course much stronger with the queen. Instead, White played queen to c3. And he's focused on his own side of the board, his things. He wants to get rid of this bishop, he wants to trade off this queen so that there is no longer a pin. It's understandable, but again, that's not how strong players think. In the next example, the white bishop on g5 is attacked, and a lot of players in similar positions would either trade or move the bishop back to h4. But either way, they are reacting to what black has just played. While strong players are relentless in pursuing their own plan, they want to force their will onto their opponent. And here, instead of moving the bishop anywhere, there is a move knight takes f6, continuing white's plan of disrupting the black's pawn chain, and now the bishop does not even have to retreat because bishop takes h6 is now a new opportunity, hitting the rook. But the game continues. The rook moves away. Now you go knight h4, potentially getting ready to involve the queen or maybe to move the knight forward. Black plays f5, and now what do you do? In a position like that, most players thinks, okay, my knight is hanging, I do not want to lose a knight, a pawn is saved is a pawn earned, right? And they'll move the knight somewhere. And guess what happens next? Now black starts executing his idea. First off, he trades off your active piece. Now he cleared this path for his queen, and he can jump forward, or he can even take on f2 first, and then jump with the queen forward with a double attack. Now the situation becomes messy, and it's very easy for white to go down. Strong players think differently. They think, okay, my knight is hanging, that's true, I do not want to blunder it. But on the other hand, what is my plan here? My plan is to attack this exposed and undefended king. How can I do this? Maybe I can bring the queen forward to h5. Looks pretty good because now I'm going to be targeting this pawn on f7. Or maybe I can sack the bishop right away to expose the king completely. And now queen to h5 comes with a check. And actually, this is winning the game by force because now my three pieces are attacking this single exposed king, and wherever it goes, either it goes here and it comes with a quick checkmate, or it goes somewhere to the other side, but either way, it's going to be winning for white. The next one is the classical Igor Nation stuff to take as a mistake, but I really want to explain why so that you can fully grasp this idea and you fully understand how exactly to execute it. Think about this position. Very often, players would capture this knight on d4. If I'm not mistaken, it's actually the most played move in the position. And what is wrong with trading here on d4? Well, there are a couple reasons. First off, as you look at this position, you can see that you can only trade off your active piece. The most active piece of black, this knight on c6, this is the one that you trade off. And you don't really want that. You want to keep your active pieces. In contrast, you'd wish to trade off one of your passive pieces, I mean, except for your king maybe, right? But for the rest of them, you wouldn't mind trading them off, but you cannot do this. They're too far away, they're too passive. And this creates this ridiculous situation that you cannot trade off your passive pieces even though you'd wish to trade them, and all you can do is to trade off your active piece. And the other interesting thing is that your active piece is gone while his active piece is replaced. Therefore, it's not gone. He still keeps his active piece on d4 while your active piece is not there anymore. And this gives him positional advantage. And the same is true for trading pawns. In this position, white should not take on c5. The other way of saying it, if you trade, be sure you're paid. And here white clearly gets nothing out of this trade. It's quite the opposite. Black develops his bishop, white gets nothing. Bad trade for white. Which also brings us to the next idea. Counter the pin aggressively. In positions like that, when your knight is pinned, most players settle for some sort of passive defense one way or the other. But there are usually way more active ways of handling this. Sometimes you can just ignore it if it's not a big deal and not a big threat at all. Sometimes you can play something like this to counter white's weak dark squares, which is now undefended because there is no bishop there. And in this case, black should just push the pawn forward. And instead of caring about this pin, black should still carry on his own plan. And now black can even sacrifice his queen on d8, continuing with bishop to b4, check, and just notice how brutally black countered this pin, and at the end of the day, black is up a piece with a winning endgame. Next one, when your opponent attacks on the flank, strike back in the center. This is a counterintuitive rule, another rule known by strong players and never used by, beginner to intermediate level players. Here's the deal. When you see that your opponent is trying to expand on the side, is trying to attack your king, our natural reaction is try to stop it somehow. We play h3, or in this game, white played queen to e2, trying to consolidate his position. But strong players know that the best reaction is a counterattack in the center. You gotta force yourself to look at these four squares and try to see if there's a way for you to strike there, to make moves there. Here, white's got to move pawn to d4, and yes, it is a pawn sacrifice, but that enables you to launch your attack there. Is there any other move that you can play here in this area? Yes, it's a move pawn to e5. This time, it kicks the queen out. And you can also use your bishop to keep harassing the queen around. If the queen moves back, then again, can you play any moves here on this area? You can play knight takes d4, pretty good. Knight to e4 is another opportunity. This time you hit at the bishop on c5. And notice how you kind of defend against his kingside attack without reacting at all. You just counter-strike. And now from here, the knight is ready to either attack the bishop or to jump forward. And if the bishop goes back, again, you could take this pawn one way or the other. That would be good. Or knight to d6. You can throw this octopus at your opponent. And now if he trades, now his opponent, like, his attack is just totally refuted, right? He's underdeveloped. And you can play rook e1, start attacking, and you'll win the game easily. When you're up material, trade pieces. This rule is sort of a cliche, and in this case, you can see that Gukesh kind of cannot believe that Dink forgot this idea and let him trade off first rooks on f2, and after that, bishop to d5 also trades off bishops. And the whole point of this rule is that first off, it eliminates risks. Once you trade it off all the pieces, or at least most of them, there's nothing you can blunder anymore. And after that, you have a very clear winning plan. So here, you're going to promote your pawn after white does whatever, pawn to f4. You're going to promote this pawn, perhaps with the support of your king, and then having an extra queen, you can easily checkmate or maybe stalemate your opponent, depending on how much time you have left on the clock. One more thing that strong players do more often than the rest is they fianchetto their bishops, because your bishop is sitting right here in an ambush like a sniper, and very often your opponent will forget about it. And here white captured on 5, forgetting about this bishop that strikes, and this bishop on b7 is safe. There's no way for white to attack it, but at the same time it exerts this long-term pressure onto his opponent. This explains why you'll notice that in a position like that, everybody plays knight to c3, bishop g5, just casual developing moves, while strong players, Caruana, Carlsen, and the like, they very often go for the Catalan opening, putting the bishop right here, fianchettoing, because after that, there are a number of advantages. First off, now you have this enhanced defense for your king. It's much harder for black to generate any attack against your king. Secondly, you have this long-term pressure onto your opponent from that sniper bishop. And lastly, there is no way for black to attack this bishop because it's deep into your territory. If you want to get your chess to the next level, but you don't have unlimited time for chess study, Booster Elo to 2000 bundle gives you a complete and clear blueprint for getting to this next level. I've been coaching chess for the last 20 years, and I've seen what works the best for people, and I've compressed it into a one trading system that you can use if you like. The link is down below in the description. And if you want to know top 10 rules from Magnus Carlsen to dominate your opponents, check out this video right here.